Hi BookTube, it's Amy. Let's continue on with our reading of Holbrook Jackson's Anatomy of Bibliomania today. On page 67 is where we're at, with a section titled Whether to Read Quickly or Slowly. A book is a miracle of itself, but a wise book is the greatest wonder. Many bacchantes, but few Bacchuses, which Swift divides into three classes: the superficial, the ignorant, and the learned. Fuller segregates from the rest some books that are only cursorily to be tasted. Of they are voluminous books that task a man's life to read them over, auxiliary books only to be repaired to on occasions, and such as are mere pieces of formality. Others throw a wider net and would allow the reading at will of any book at any time for which we have a fancy. Yet, and it is the quintessence and chief glory of the miracle of books, that none is so mean as to lack admirers. The Bacchuses must be separated, segregated, sorted out from the bacchantes, the geese from the swans, the sheep from the goats. But a few out of the millions of books command or deserve to command our whole hearts. Those few become many in the multitudinous battalions of the printed word, and the best of them eternities in print. For if it takes millenniums to make a Bible, it survives through eternity. The reading of these great books alone, few though they be, is more than enough. Did we choose but them for the shortness of our days, tempus fugit et nuquam revertier, the Latin, translating to a lifetime will hardly suffice to know, as they ought to be known, the great masterpieces of man's genius. Yet for all this we take them in the vulgar phrase as read, although, as Friedrich Harrison well says, they are never sufficiently read until they become our daily mental food. For more to this purpose, read him, but it needs no defence, for as all agree, good seeketh what is good, and dwelleth on it as a dog gnaweth his bone, which is the same as the proverb advises, read a page, think an age. Pliny advises, pray remember to select with care the standard authors on each subject, for as the saying is, though we should read much, we should not read many books. This is good advice enough in a general comprehension, but we must be curious to avoid a mistake here by accepting it as a final piece, for as Henry Jackson wisely gives out, reading slowly and reading quickly are distinct arts, both of them valuable. A notable instance of varied reading occurs in the life of Dr. Johnson, who in his youth as well as in later days roamed freely and broadly over many book realms. He might perhaps, says Boswell, have studied more assiduously, but it may be doubted whether such a mind as his was not more enriched by roaming at large in the fields of literature than if he had been confined to any single spot. Then, drawing upon the analogy of mind and body, he suggests that as the flesh of animals who feed excursively is allowed to have a higher flavor than those who are cooped up, so there may be the same difference between men who read as their tastes prompt and men who are confined in cells and colleges to stated tasks. Quintilian held that all reading should be slow and meditative, not delivered to the memory in its crude state, but sweetened and worked up to by frequent repetition. Reading furnishes the mind with materials of knowledge, saith Locke. It is thinking makes what we read ours. We are of the ruminating kind, and it is not enough to cram ourselves with a great load of collections. Unless we chew over them again, they will not give us strength and nourishment. We must meditate in solitude upon what we read as well as upon what we think. For as Cowley maintains, cognation is the best thing which distinguishes the solitude of a god from that of a wild beast. Emerson is a prime example of this method. He read a book for the lustres, the highlights, at which he kindled his own thoughts. Books for him were again territories wherein he might find jumping off places for the depths of himself. His reading was for a touch of suggestion that might help to crystallize the thoughts that were floating within him. He had a quick eye for a phrase, an epigram, an aphorism, pounced upon them, made them his own. They helped to make my top spin, he said, and Cabot thinks that these discoveries were all he cared to know of a book. A compatriot of Emerson's in his own time advertises a like method. seeking to establish from his reading magnetic centers, live spots, which thrust out tentacles of association and catch and draw to themselves their kind. For he says there are few joys in reading like the joy of the chase, a joy which comes largely through the action of these centers of association in your brain. Keats believed that a man might pass a very pleasant life reading on a certain day a certain page full of poesy or distilled prose. Let him wander with it, he advises, muse upon it and reflect upon it, and bring home to it and prophesy upon it and dream upon it until it becomes stale, which will never be. For to a man of ripe intellect, any one grand and spiritual passage may serve as a starting post towards all the 32 palaces. 'Tis a happy voyage of conception, what delicious, diligent indolence. A doze upon a sofa does not hinder it, and a nap upon clover engenders ethereal finger-pointings. The prattle of a child gives its wings, and the converse of middle age a strength to beat them. A strain of music conducts to an old angle of the aisle, and when the leaves whisper it puts a girdle round the earth. Nor is this sparing touch of noble books irreverent to their writers, for the honours paid by man to man are trifles in comparison to the benefit done by great works to the spirit and pulse of good by their mere passive existence. Man should be content, therefore, with a few points to tip with the fine web of his soul, and weave a tapestry, empyrean full of symbols for his spiritual eye, of softness for his spiritual touch, of space for his wandering, of distinctness for luxury. This is no other than what is enjoined as a duty by Emerson in his journal. His idea is this: do not give us counters of base coins, but every word of real value which must warm and invite the mind to desirable movement. The essential mark of poetry is that it betrays in every word instant activity of mind. And Stevenson had the same idea when he declared that in anything fit to be called by the name of reading, the process itself should be absorbing and voluptuous. We should gloat over a book and be wrapped clean out of ourselves, and rise from the perusal, our mind filled with the busiest kaleidoscopic dance of images. I would apply the same test to all writing, which should be as vehement flame-making fuel to consume the dross it meets in its way, so that it may warm and illuminate the rest. Whereunto may be added the wise testimony of Rabelais, who stoutly recommended the dog and bone method to those of his disciples and other jolly fools who presume to believe that his life of the great Gargantua and Father Pantagruel contained nothing but jests, mockeries, lascivious discourse, and recreative lies. In order to correct that impression, he gives them a parable of a dog with a marrow bone. Mark, he says, with what devotion and circumventiveness he wards and watcheth it, with what care he keeps it, how fervently he holds it, how prudently he gobbles it, or rather gobbets it, with what affection he breaks it, with what diligence he sucks it. And all this labour, to what end? What reapeth he? Nothing but a little marrow. But it is the marrow of his book, Rabelais, which would have his disciples seek, and when he so much commends them to emulate a dog with a bone, I dare venture the opinion that he speaks for all good books and good readers. For what he advocates for his own book is equally sound for the rest. He is very frequent and confident in this particular. It becomes you to be wise, to smell, feel, and have an estimation these fair, godly books, stuffed with high conceptions. And farther, you must, by a sedulous lecture and frequent meditation, break the bone and suck out the marrow. In this allegorical sense, and in these Pythagorean symbols, he proposes to lead his disciples to a well-advised and valiant reading of his own works, and so may all disciples of books, and such jolly fools of ease and leisure, who may adventure upon the art of reading, find in either kind of taste, and be thus initiated into the most glorious doctrines and dreadful mysteries, for the marrow of a book is not less than these, but more. And that brings us to the end of that section there, on whether to read quickly or slowly, ending with advice to chew over it till you suck out the marrow of what you're reading. But I think whether we read fast or slow, there is merit in both of those approaches. But that's all for today in Holbrook Jackson.